Shabbat Shalom. Good morning, YouTube. We are again reading in our Bibles. We're starting with Genesis chapter 31. I am still reading out of the scriptures. And this is probably going to be a long one, so let's jump right in. Chapter 31. And he heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what belonged to our father he has made all this wealth. And Jacob would look at the face of Laban and see that it was not toward him as before. And Yahweh said to Jacob, Return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I am with you. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flock, and said to them, I see your father's face, that it is not towards me as before, but the Elohim of my father has been with me. And you know that I have served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. But Elohim did not allow him to do evil to me. When he said this, the speckled are your wages, then all the flocks bore speckled. And when he said this, the streaked are your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked. So Elohim has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. And it came to be at the time when the flocks conceived, that I lifted my eyes and looked in a dream, and saw the rams, which leaped upon the flocks, were streaked, speckled, and mottled. And the messenger of Elohim spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I said, Here I am. And he said, Lift your eyes now, and see, all the rams which leap on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the El of Beth-el, where you anointed the standing column, and where you made a vow to me. Now rise up, get out of this land, and return to the land of your relatives. And Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, Do we still have any portion or inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned by him as strangers? For he has sold us, and also entirely consumed our silver. For all the wealth which Elohim has taken from our father is ours and our children's. Now then, do whatever Elohim has told you. So Jacob rose and put his sons and his wives on camels, and he drove off all his livestock and all his possessions which he had acquired, his property of the livestock which he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. And when Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole the house idols that were her father's. And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean, because he did not inform him that he was about to flee. And he fled with all that he had. And he rose up and passed over the river, and headed toward the mountains of Gilead. And on the third day Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Then he took his brothers with him, and pursued him for 7 days' journey. And he overtook him in the mountains of Gilead. But in a dream by night Elohim came to Laban the Aramean, and said to him, Guard yourself that you do not speak to Jacob either good or evil. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mountains, and Laban with his brothers pitched in the mountains of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, What have you done, that you have deceived me, and driven my daughters off like captives taken with the sword? Why do you flee secretly and deceive me, and not inform me? And I would have sent you away with joy and songs, with tambourine and lyre. And you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have been foolish to do this. It is in the power of my hand to do evil to you. But Elohim of your father spoke to me last night, saying, Guard yourself that you do not speak to Jacob either good or evil. And now you have gone, because you greatly long for your father's house. But why did you steal my mighty ones? And Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Lest you tear your daughters away from me. With whomever you find your mighty ones, do not let him live. In the presence of our brothers, see for yourself what is with me, and take it with you. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and to Leah's tent, and the tents of the 2 female servants, but he did not find them. And he came out of Leah's tent, and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the house idols, and put them in the camel's saddle, and sat on them. And Laban searched all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, Let it not displease my master that I am unable to rise before you, for the way of women is with me. It's that time of month. And he searched, but did not find the house idols. And Jacob was wroth and contented with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, What is my transgression? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Now that you have searched all my goods, what have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my brothers and your brothers, and let them decide between the two of us. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried their young, and I have not eaten the rams of your sheep. That which was torn by beasts I did not bring to you. I myself bore the loss of it. You required it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. Unless the Elohim of my father, the Elohim of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, you would now have sent me away empty-handed. Elohim has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rendered judgment last night. And Laban answered and said to Jacob, These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and this flock is my flock, and all that you see is mine. But what shall I do today to these my daughters, or to their children whom they have borne? And now, come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and it shall be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a standing column. And Jacob said to his brothers, Gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there on the heap. And Laban called it Yegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. And Laban said, This heap is a witness between you and me today. That is why its name was called Gilead. Also Mitzpah, because he said, Let Yahweh watch between you and me when we are out of each other's sight. If you afflict my daughters, or if you take other wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, Elohim is witness between you and me. And Laban said to Jacob, See this heap, and see the standing column which I have placed between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this standing column is a witness, that I do not pass beyond this heap to you, and you do not pass beyond this heap and this standing column to me for evil. The Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Nahor, and the Elohim of their father rightly rule between us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. And Jacob slaughtered a slaughtering on the mountain, and called his brothers to eat bread. And they ate bread, and spent the night on the mountain. And Laban rose up early in the morning, and kissed his sons and daughters, and blessed them. And Laban left and returned to his place. Okay, that's 31. Coffee is indicated. He chases Jacob and crew for a week before he catches up to him. And he goes through this big spiel of, you've taken my daughters in the middle of the night, why are you afraid? I would have thrown you a big party and had all this big celebration if you just wanted to go. And yeah, we don't really believe that. Because Laban goes back on his word all the time. But then he's like, But why have you taken my mighty ones? That's the real thing. The house idols. Now, it doesn't say why Rachel took them. It just says that she took them and she hid them. Now, why did she take them? I did a lot of reading on this, and there's several different theories. Some is that Rachel still believed in some of the other gods and, wanted to take some. But at the beginning of this chapter, it says that Laban, sold them like strangers, because he made Jacob work 7 years for each one. So he really just sold them. Traditionally, any income that Laban would have gotten from Jacob for his daughters should have gone to them in a dowry, or kept for them for later, but it should have gone to them at some time. But the girls say that he already spent it all. This may have been a revenge of, well, you're not, giving us anything. I'm going to take your house idols. I also read that there was a tradition in that area at the time that whoever had the house idols would have the inheritance of the land when her father died. Any of these is possible. We don't really know for sure. But she does take them, but Laban doesn't find them. And after Laban doesn't find them, Jacob just gets it all out. He's been holding his tongue for 20 years. 20 years. He's been mistreated. He knows he's been mistreated. And he just lets it all out. Way nicer than I would have, but he lets it all out. And Laban, it looks like he's gonna fight back at first, because he's like, these daughters are mine, these sons are mine, these flocks are mine. But then he changes his mind and says, let's make a covenant. Laban had a vision from the father the night before not to do anything to hurt or bless Jacob. So he backs down, says, let's make an agreement. I don't cross this area to do you harm. You don't cross this area to come do me harm. And Laban also adds, do not mistreat my daughters, and do not take another wife besides my two daughters. So they make this agreement. They, pile up rocks and slaughter and eat, and that is the end of chapter 31. And now we get into a big one. Chapter 32. And Jacob went on his way, and the messengers of Elohim met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is the camp of Elohim. And he called the name of the place Mahanayim. Hebrew words. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir, the field of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, say this to my master Esau. Your servant Jacob said this, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed there until now. And I have bulls and donkeys, flocks and male and female servants. And I have sent to inform my master to find favor in your eyes. So the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he is also coming to meet you, and 400 men with him. And Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. So he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and herds and camels, into two groups. And he said, if Esau comes to one group and strikes it, then the other group which is left shall escape. And Jacob said, O Elohim of my father Abraham, and Elohim of my father Isaac, Yahweh, who said to me, return to your land and to your relatives, and I do good to you. I do not deserve the least of all the loving commitment and all the truth which you have shown your servant, for I passed over this Yarden with my staff, and now I have become two groups. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and shall strike me and the mother with the children. For you said, I shall certainly do good to you, and shall make your seed as the sand of the sea, which are too numerous to count. Now, from what I am aware of, that is actually the first time we see a prayer in this book. And he spent the night there and took what came to his hand as a present for Esau his brother, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 suckling camels with their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 foals. And he gave them into the hand of his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, pass over before me and put some distance between drove and drove. And he commanded the first one, saying, when Esau my brother meets you and asks you, saying, to whom do you belong and where are you going? And whose are these in front of you? Then you shall say, they are your servant Jacob's. It is a present sent to my master Esau, and see, he also is behind us. So he commanded the second and the third, and all who followed the droves, saying, speak to Esau this same word when you find him. And you shall say, also look, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he said, let me appease him with the present that goes before me, and after that see his face, he might accept me. And the present passed over before him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. And he rose up that night, and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and passed over the ford of Yabok. And he took them and sent them over the stream, and sent them over what he had. Now here's a big one. All right, let's stop and talk about the first half of this chapter first. So things are fine with Laban. Keeps going. Now he's worried about Esau. When he left Canaan 20 years ago, Esau wanted to kill him for taking his birthright and his blessing. Now, he didn't really take his birthright. Esau sold it. He didn't object. He was just like, yeah, okay, give me the soup. I don't need a birthright anyway. He was bitter about it later, though. But his blessing, on the other hand, oh, Jacob totally deceived him. He cheated him, deceived his own father, and cheated Esau out of his blessing. And he left home for 20 years because of it. So now he's going back, and he's been told to go back. The father's told him, you gotta go home. But he's worried. So he's like, send messengers out. Go tell him I'm on my way. Kind of see how things are. And they're like, yeah, well, he's coming to meet you too, and he's got 400 guys with him. Don't know what their intentions are, but it worries Jacob, and he splits his camp into 2. So that's where we are there. Now this next part has had many interpretations, many different comments on. I did a lot of reading on this next part. Still in chapter 32, verse 24. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. And when he saw that he did not overcome him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, I am not letting you go until you have blessed me. Okay. In most Bibles, usually in the Bible, when a he or him is referring to the Father, it will be capitalized. The capitalization denotes the deity, okay? This has a whole lot of capitals in it. And Jacob was left alone, and a man, capital, wrestled with him until the breaking of day. And when he, capital He, saw that he, capital, did not overcome him, he, capital, touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated as he, capital, wrestled with him. And he, capital, said, let me go. Let me, capital, go, for the day breaks. But he said, I am not letting you, capital, go until you, capital, have blessed me. So what it seems to be saying here, we'll say God instead of the capitals, okay? So it kind of makes sense. For those of you who are reading with me for the first time here and don't know this already, we'll just say God for the capitals. And Jacob was left alone, and God wrestled with him until the breaking of day. And when God saw that God did not overcome him, Jacob, God touched the socket of Jacob's hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated as God wrestled with him. And God said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But he said, "I am not letting you go until you have blessed me." Again, that part is not the direct quote, just trying to help you understand what it's implying. It's not flat out saying, but it's implying. To continue on. 27. So he asked him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." And he said, "Your name is no longer called Jacob, but Israel, because you have striven with Elohim and with men and have overcome." And Jacob asked him, saying, "Please let me know your name." And he said, "Why do you ask about my name?" And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen Elohim face to face, and my life is preserved. And the sun rose on him as he passed over Penuel, and he limped on his hip. That is why the children of Israel to this day do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is in the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of the thigh of Jacob in the sinew of the hip. That is the end of 32. So what it seems to be implying is Jacob wrestled with God, and he says, "What is your name?" And he says, "Jacob." That kind of seems a little familiar to when he took Esau's blessing. When Isaac asks him, "What is your name, my son?" And he says, "Esau," and gets the blessing. Now it's like, "What is your name?" He says, "Jacob." Jacob also gets his name changed. Now we've seen that before with Abraham and Sarai. Now Jacob becomes Israel. Later in Exodus, it will describe that no man can see God's face, or he will surely die. That he's so bright that you can't look at his face. It will kill you because it's that bright. So what is this? We also saw in the very beginning of Genesis that God walked with Adam and Eve in the garden. There are many theories. Okay. One is that it was a vision. But he walks with a limp afterwards. Visions don't usually give you injuries. Another theory is that it was actually an angel that he was fighting with. Could be. I guess the Talmud tradition actually names the angel, which one it was. I don't know how they got that, but okay. Could be an angel. It doesn't tell us. It also could be God. I mean, God can do whatever he wants. But he would have to take human form. Because we cannot see the actual face of God and live. But God could do it. I mean, he can do anything. But another theory is that it's actually Yeshua. Before he comes to earth and is born through Mary, that his spirit was still alive before that. And there's actually a theory that a lot of these places where a messenger of Yahweh comes to talk to people, that sometimes it's Yeshua. There's also another theory that it's really just an internal struggle. He's struggling with himself. So, you're going to have to make up your own mind, do your own research, read your own Bible. I think I'm going with the Yeshua camp on this one because of the capitals. And it's pretty much the same out of the King James. I have heard that it's a little different in like the Jewish Bible. Like there's one called the Complete Jewish Bible, which doesn't have a lot of these capitals in it. But still, at the end, Jacob thinks that he has seen the face of God, the face of his Elohim. But whether Jacob was fighting with Yeshua or God or an angel or his own imagination, he is changed by this. And this is where he becomes Israel. That's literally the name that he is given, Israel. Which means something like he who overcomes with El, or God. But this totally changes Jacob. He's persevered through this struggle and come out on the other side a changed man. We saw the beginning of him changing and maturing when he went to Laban's house. But here is where he really turns into the Jacob of the Bible, where, you know, he's being righteous, doing what he's supposed to be doing. And this establishes Israel. Not the nation state, not lines on a map. This is Israel. It's Jacob. The house of Israel is his children and grandchildren, etc. But from now on, Jacob is a completely different person, in the sense that he has grown into and matured into a different person. He is no longer the conniving, cheating youth that he used to be. Now he is God's servant. Chapter 33. And Jacob lifted his eyes and looked and saw Esau coming, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 female servants. And he put the female servants and their children in front, and Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. And he himself passed over before them, and bowed himself to the ground 7 times, until he came near to his brother. And Esau ran to meet him, and embraced him, and fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes, and saw the women and children, and said, Who are these with you? And he said, The children with whom Elohim has favored your servant. Then the female servants came near, they and their children, and bowed themselves. And Leah also came near with her children, and they bowed themselves. And Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed themselves. And Esau said, What do you mean by all this company which I met? And he said, To find favor in the eyes of my master. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Let what you have remain yours. And Jacob said, No, please, if I have now found favor in your eyes, then receive my present from my hand, because I have seen your face like seeing the face of Elohim, and you were pleased with me. Please take my blessing that is brought to you, because Elohim has favored me, and because I have all I need. And he urged him, and he took it. And he said, Let us depart and go, and let me go before you. But he said to him, My master knows that the children are weak, and the flocks and herds which are nursing are with me. And if the men should drive them hard one day, all the flock shall die. Please let my master go before his servant, and let me lead on slowly according to the pace of the livestock that go before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my master in Seir. And Esau said, Please let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, Why this? Let me find favor in the eyes of my master. And Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. And Jacob set out to Sukkot, and built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. This is why the name of the place is called Sukkot. And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Padan Aram. And he pitched his tent before the city, and he bought the portion of the field where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 keseta, some kind of money. And he set up a slaughter place there and called it El Elohe Yisrael. Hebrew words. that is the end of 33. So all this worrying and splitting camps and separating people, and Esau runs up and hugs him and kisses him. Now, as for the gifts that Jacob had tried to give him, he says, no, you keep your stuff. And Jacob's like, no, I insist. That was the custom then, to refuse a gift at first, even if you really wanted it. So we don't really know if he was just being courteous or if he really didn't want it but just felt pressured to take it. We don't know. But Jacob definitely owes Esau. So he gives him anyway. You know, he insists that Esau take the flocks. And Esau's like, all right, let's go home. Let's go back to my place. Jacob's like, I gotta go slow because I got pregnant cattle and I got children, little kids, and, we gotta go slow. So you go ahead. We'll see you there. It's like, well, let me leave some people to, help you along the way. No, we're good. Go on. Okay, well, we'll see you later. And then Jacob goes somewhere else. He didn't want to go to Esau's house. Gets his own place outside of Shechem, I think it said. Yeah, Shechem. And he sets up tents, makes a slaughter place, gets it all ready to stay there, and lives in booths. Sukkot. But yeah, all that worry and everything came out good. So he's made peace with his brother. He's back in the land and got his own place. Huge crew, huge flocks. Jacob's doing well. That's where we're going to leave it today. This has been long enough video anyway. So thanks for coming along with me today. I hope you're reading along in your Bible. And I hope you join us again next Saturday. Have a wonderful day. May the Father bless you all. Shalom.